Hey everyone, welcome to the Camino Cafe. So happy that you have joined us. I have a special treat for everyone today because we have Yosmar with us, and many of you probably know her from her wonderful cookbook, Tastes of the Camino. And this was, I think I just read on your Facebook page, Yosmar, that this was your 5th year anniversary of publishing that. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's been 5 years since I launched the book, and it
Wow,
seems like it was yesterday.
congratulations. Well,
Thank you.
Yosmar is coming to us today directly from Santiago. She just walked another Camino, and was this your 7th Camino?
This was my 6th Camino, but the first time solo.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I can't wait to talk about that because she walked a different route. So that's going to be super interesting. But she's been at all the festivities this weekend. So we have so much to talk about. I guess let's start with, how has this weekend been? It must have been super exciting arriving in Santiago on this special weekend.
You know, it is, and it's a little bit daunting at the same time. Arriving on St. James Day, pilgrim numbers are lower than they used to be, but it is St. James Day, so you do have a lot of people that have set out to walk to arrive this weekend, which created a bit of a bottleneck with lodging, particularly since because of COVID, capacity is restricted in a lot of albergues. Depending on the region, it can be as low as 30% or as high as 75%. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but it all worked out. But arriving in the city, I walked the last 3 kilometers under harder rain, so I arrived soaked and cold, but it was lovely still. It was a lovely feeling. There's a lot of activity going on because they had fireworks the night before. They had a concert, then they had fireworks last night, then the Queen and King of Spain were in town today, and that created some challenges, but it's all good. But for me, after all these years on the Camino, walking the Camino and coming to Santiago, being in Santiago is not so much about the end of my Camino, but it's about, thinking about what comes next, but also about connecting with a lot of friends that I've met, not necessarily on the Camino, but because of the Camino. I've coincided with friends from the United States here, friends from Ireland here. I have some friends that live in Santiago, so I've been reconnecting with them. And it's just a lovely, lovely feeling of reunion, which I just love,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you arrived there yesterday?
I arrived Friday.
Friday.
Because of the whole lodging situation, I started doing some longer stretches than I had planned, and I was able to arrive on Friday. Initially, I thought I was going to arrive yesterday, but I was able to arrive, and that's good for me. It was fun. It was good.
Yeah.
I got to, and I would say the Pilgrim's office system is working. Like, you register online, they give you a QR code when you arrive at the office. You present that QR code, and then they give you a ticket with another QR code. With that, you're able to track how far away are you from being seen. So, I was number 876, and they were serving number 366. So I had lunch, I did my check-in, I took a shower, I had time for all that, and then I got back. They asked you to be back 30 numbers before yours. I got back, and I got my Compostela, and so it was good. Today, I went with a friend. It was a little bit more chaotic because the line was much longer, but it was, it's all good. So
congratulations. That's so
Thank
exciting.
you.
This one. And I've been kind of living through your Facebook posts because you first headed out to, I think, Iceland, right? And your photos were gorgeous from that trip. And then, of course, heading on to Spain. And so had you had it planned that you were, Yeah, like when did you decide that you were going to be in Santiago this weekend? Is this something long planned or just something right after we started
No.
being able to travel? You said,
So here's the thing. I had been thinking for my summer travel, because Iceland was one of the first countries that announced that you could travel, or that Americans would be allowed to travel in. I was thinking of doing Iceland, and I was toying with that idea a bit. And then Spain announced that they were opening up. And there were a lot of different factors. Spain announced that they were opening up, and I'm like, well, I want to do a Camino, but I'm kind of already emotionally committed to doing Iceland. So I still hadn't bought tickets for Iceland. So I started looking at different ways of doing it economically. And the best way for me was actually to fly to Madrid and buy 2 different tickets, one to Madrid and one from Madrid to Reykjavik. And that's what I ended up doing, because by the time I started thinking about Iceland, airfares to Iceland from the US in coach were outrageous.
yes.
So I started saying, well, how can I combine the two of them? And then I had family coming into town, and I wanted to see my nephews before I left. So I was waiting for them to arrive and just hang out, overlap a day so I could see the little ones. And then I had a friend that wanted to spend some time in Spain over 4th of July. And I said, okay, well, she wanted to travel with me over 4th of July. I said, well, I'm going to be in Spain. If you want to travel, you have to come to Spain. That was how I said. And she's like, sure. So all that kind of dictated when I would start my Camino.
Okay.
Because I couldn't start the Camino before her coming to Spain, because I couldn't leave the US soon enough. And then, and when I started my Camino, that meant I arrived here this weekend. It wasn't planned. It wasn't on purpose. I wasn't trying to arrive here this weekend. As a matter of fact, before she had fully committed, I was going to arrive here on a few days before my birthday, which I was excited to spend my birthday here. And then when she said, oh yeah, I'm going, I was like, okay, I'll delay this by a week. And that's why I arrived here this weekend. Long story short, or short story long.
It sounded like it ended up being perfect timing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, Yosmar, since you have done quite a bit of traveling during all, the kind of the end of the restrictions, what has that been like for you? Can you give an idea to viewers and listeners, what you've experienced in trying to travel first to Iceland and then to Spain, and what you've been noticing is different than in the past?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you have to embark with it knowing that things can change at any moment, and you need to be flexible. If you are not comfortable with that level of uncertainty, maybe traveling this year overseas might not be the best choice for you. So for instance, when I got to, first when I booked my ticket to Spain, I booked it after the prime minister or the president had said, yeah, we're opening June 7th. And then there was a week period where the Spanish government announced that the entry restrictions to third countries, nationals, would be extended to June 30th. So I was like, okay, I may not be able to fly to Spain. So I was coming up with a plan B. I was like, okay, let me try to get to Iceland in a different way, and I'll do Iceland and I'll deal with Spain in a later time. And then a week later, there was further clarification that yes, I could travel here because I was vaccinated. But the rules have been changing almost on a weekly basis. When I got to Iceland, there were certain restrictions about mask use, being tested upon arrival. Those were lifted the day before I left.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. And for instance, also when I arrived in Spain the first time, so I had a 14-hour layover in Spain, they asked to see my vaccination card. When I got back from Iceland, they were like, okay, go on, you have the QR code, we don't need to see anything. So restrictions have changed. And then the same thing that 14-hour layover, I went into Madrid, and everyone was using masks on the street, etc. That was lifted towards the end of the month. In Iceland, most of the restrictions were eliminated at the end of June, and now they're coming back. They just announced that now everyone needs whether you're vaccinated or not, you need a PCR test or an antigen test to enter Iceland. And in Spain, it's region by region. So or municipalities by municipalities. And I don't even want to start saying what's going on right now, because I feel like it's going to change in a week or two.
So.
Yeah, like right now in Galicia, certain municipalities are requiring you to show a PCR test or proof of vaccination to enter bars and nightclubs. Well, I don't go to bars and nightclubs, I do go to bars, but not nightclubs. Here in Santiago, I haven't seen that happen yet. I haven't been asked. So I'm not sure if that applies to the municipality of Santiago or not, but that was the development this past week. And it was announced on, I think, Tuesday or Thursday, that starting today or last night at midnight, that was going to be the new thing. I haven't had anyone ask me, but I don't know if it applies to Santiago or not. I don't think so. Or they're just being more lenient because they have so many people in town that they don't feel like they can manage that right now, and they'll start doing that next week, tomorrow or Tuesday, who knows, when there are less people in town. Because right now the city is packed. It's packed. And it's hard to get a restaurant reservation because they have capacity limit restrictions in place. I couldn't go to the square today to see, I wanted to see the military, what do they call it? The military inspection by the king. The king and the queen and their daughters were in town. I saw the military parade going into the square a little bit. I was outside of the square and I saw the king and queen arriving in their car and the daughters arriving in a different car, but I wasn't able to see it because they weren't only allowing 200 people into the square.
Oh, wow. So did they have guards like at the tunnel and all of the
yes,
entry?
And all the streets, etc. And I'm staying in a hotel very close to the square. So when I was done watching the military parade, I wanted to come back to my hotel. And even now at night, or not night because it's quite bright outside, I wanted to come back. And the only reason I got through was because I showed them the key to my hotel room, and they're like, I'm staying here. I need to get through. And they're like, okay, because they're turning people away.
Okay. So is there a lot of social distancing outside? Is that the reason for the 200? Is that they're trying to
do social distancing as best as possible. So in the square for today, but it's hard. It really is, particularly on a weekend where there's so many people in town. Last night when I was coming from the fireworks, so the fireworks, what they did, historically, all the fireworks were in this main square and everyone would come to the square. Like you'd have 10,000 people in the square. Now they put the fireworks in 5 different locations, so you can observe them from different points in the city. So not as many people were in the square. I was out in the hill, kind of outside, and that's where I took that picture with the moon that you liked.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and so, but when I came back, I had to go through the square to get to my hotel. There was a small concert and there was no social distancing, but people were wearing masks. Everyone was wearing masks outside. That seems to be a really big thing here in Spain, even though they've lifted the mask mandate for outside, as long as you can keep social distance. Many people are still using them when they're outside.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
You've been to Santiago several times and you've walked several Caminos. What do you feel like the vibe is as far as how everybody's feeling about having pilgrims come back and walking? And, are you feeling like people are happy to see pilgrims back on, or?
Absolutely.
Experience?
Absolutely. They're happy, like albergue owners of casas rurales or restaurant establishments, they're happy. but they're also very cautious because they know if a case gets traced back to them, that their establishment will be shut down. So they, the Casas Rurales, not everyone does this, and some albergues, they take your temperature when you come in, they ask you to use hand sanitizer, but not everybody does this. So, they know that if something gets traced back to them, they could be shut down. And so they're being cautious, but yes, they're happy. I mean, a year and a half of shutdown has consequences for many, and not and negative consequences for many. This is their livelihood.
Right.
So yes, they're happy, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks.
Yeah. What's your sense? I think ever since it started, I've kind of worried about, my favorite restaurants, my favorite places in Santiago, maybe not staying open. What's your sense on, have you noticed things being permanently closed, or are you feeling like things are pretty much open that you expected?
So most of the establishments I've seen that I used to go to are open. A couple are closed. One of them, I don't know, it's a cafe and a hotel. I don't know if that's closed, or they're waiting to reopen. Another one is, you probably know this, the Tapas Bar Taberna do Bispo, that was closed, but I went to their sister property and I was chatting with the bartender, and he's like, oh, that's opening next week. So I think they're waiting to find, those that probably there's two restaurants owned by the same people. They're like, let's just open one, pay staff for one only. So I think they're just waiting to see the numbers. The cafe near the market that I liked was open. Everything in the market was open. A restaurant that I really liked was open, but I couldn't get it in. Like, it was booked solid through tonight. I had a reservation for tonight, but I just canceled it because I ate a huge lunch and I can't eat dinner. Well, I changed it to Wednesday. So,
did you say the market's open? The food market?
The market's open. Yeah, the food market's open. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting to hear.
Yeah. And it was packed yesterday, but it's a weekend. Saturday's always packed, and then with the Holy Year, it'll be interesting. I'm staying through Thursday morning here, so it'll be interesting to see, tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday what's going on.
All right. And are you heading out to the end of the world before you? Are you walking that?
So that's, no, I'm not. I was planning on walking it, but a couple things. I've heard that there are lodging issues there, meaning so when I started this Camino, a good friend of mine that's involved with Camino associations here in Spain, he saw on Facebook that I was going on the Camino, and he's like, can I make a suggestion? Start making reservations in albergues. And he's involved with a lot of municipal albergues and donativos albergues that traditionally don't take reservations. He's like, please I recommend that you make reservations at least 1 or 2 days before because of capacity limits. So I started making them. I did the first one about 4 days before, and then everything else I did like 2 days before. And I started noticing that the people, as I was calling, people were telling me completo, completo, completo. So I started getting more concerned. And then that last stretch from Lugo to Santiago, where 2 of the days it merges with the Frances, it was hard to get lodge. And one night I slept in a Casa Rural off the Camino because I could not find absolutely anything. Fortunately, this Casa Rural, they picked me up on the Camino and then dropped me off the next morning. So I've heard, somebody told me, a good friend of mine was planning to go to Muxia on Tuesday and Wednesday, and she was having trouble getting lodging in Muxia. So I'm gonna, after I get off this, I'm gonna start calling around to see if I can get lodging. And if not, I'm just gonna stay here. And then on Thursday, I'll leave.
Okay.
But I would like to go at least one night, even if it's not walking, but just to relax out there.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. We'll see if it's possible or not.
Okay. So this time you walked it, was it the Primitivo that you walked this time?
Yes, yes.
So yesterday I was doing some research on St. James, for the upcoming feast day, and I never knew that Kino Fonso, back when they found the relics of St. James, actually walked that route for the first time.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty cool. So I just wondered, was this your first time on that route? I've never been on that, so I have no idea what it's like.
So it's my first, I did the last 100K of that route 2 years ago. And it's my first time that I do the whole route from Oviedo. And it's a route that's gaining popularity. So I can't say I felt alone or lonely. There were quite a bit of pilgrims walking. Again, part of that's driven by St. James Day. But it's a route that doesn't have as much infrastructure. So some of the stages are longer, or 25 or 30 kilometers. And some stages, sometimes you walk 20 kilometers without seeing absolutely anything,
Wow.
So either a cafe or a bar or a casa rural or a albergue, like there's nothing. So you have to walk that much, and you're walking through mountains. It's not the nice, perfect paths of the Camino Frances.
Okay.
You're walking up mountains, down mountains, and some treacherous terrain with a lot of steep declines and loose rocks.
Wow.
So it is definitely a Camino that you should be physically fit for. It's a more demanding Camino, but it's gorgeous. The views are gorgeous. It really is gorgeous. I recommend it.
Yeah, your photos have been stunning. I mean, some of that
Thank you.
scenery, the landscape was gorgeous.
Yeah.
So if you had to compare it, to one of the hardest days on the Frances, what would you say it's most like?
Think about, so I would say not so much in height. Think about going over the Pyrenees and then coming down.
Okay.
And coming down the steeper way. Think about going up Ocibrero, and think about coming down something like that as well.
Okay.
And then to that add no bar or cafe within 20 kilometers. So think about that. Yeah, particularly the first week from Oviedo to Lugo. From Lugo to Santiago is you're in Galicia, it's rolling hills, it's easy.
Yeah.
Nothing challenging about that. But that first week is challenging.
Right, and you walked a lot of kilometers some days, so.
Yeah, there were a couple of days I didn't have a choice. Like it was like, for instance, there was my third to last day. I walked 28 kilometers. My choices were to walk 12 or 28. I opted for 28.
Yeah.
And then the day that I walked 34, that's a slightly different story. That was my second to last day, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't have more than 23 or 24 kilometers to walk into town the last day. So with that in mind, I said, and that was the day that I was sleeping off the Camino, so I could go as far or as little as I wanted to, because there were, like, I didn't have to commit something up front. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to walk to Sarceda. And then I was like, no, let me try to walk to Santa Irene, because that will shorten my day to significantly. Well, I got to Santa Irene, and I was sitting in front of the municipal albergue about to call the Casa Rural. I'm in a bench in the sun. There's nothing to drink, etc. I'm like, I knew I was going to have to wait 15 minutes to have an hour until they pick me up. It's like, you know what? I'm going to keep on walking until I find a cafe, because at least if I'm going to wait in the sun, I want to be comfortable. And that's what I did. And so and that's how I ended up walking 34 kilometers. But that's not something I normally do.
Yeah.
Matter
How'd you feel
for me, the idea is, pardon?
Oh, go ahead.
For me, the ideal distance is 20-25. But what was your question? How did I did at the end of the day?
Yeah,
I was
how'd you feel?
exhausted.
Yeah,
I got
bet.
some blisters. I got some blisters that day. And then I got to my Casa Rural. I took a shower, and the lady was very kind. She prepared dinner for me. She had other guests, but I think she likes to stagger her dinner. So I was like the first one to have dinner, and I went straight to my room and I slept, you
Nice,
know. So,
nice. Okay, so question for you. Um, Wondering about your packing. So, you've done several Caminos, so you've probably become a very good packer, I'm imagining, for your trips. Um, what's a luxury item that's in your backpack every time? Something that you're like, man, I just gotta have.
well, if it's something I've got to have, it typically is not a luxury item. Let's just put it that way, in my opinion. No, I think I do carry one, either one or the other, either a lipstick or a lip gloss.
Yeah.
Usually lipstick, because I can dab my cheeks with it too.
Ah,
It becomes
very smart.
multi-purpose. Um, and then I do take a pair of tweezers, because that to me is not a luxury so much. It's just
Same.
they help. Yeah, they help with a lot of things. And what else did I take? That was a luxury. I mean, I take conditioner. I don't consider that a luxury. I consider that a basic necessity, but someone else might consider that a luxury.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Like,
Well,
I don't think I think they're basic necessities for me. Call me high
well, I
maintenance.
saw, I saw the size of your backpack and it looked pretty small.
It did, but I still had to take. So, okay, I had initially packed a skirt and a very lightweight dress, actually this one that I'm wearing, because I wanted to have that when I arrived in Santiago.
Yes.
Okay. And with that, a few pair of extra underwear. And then my first day with my pack, let's just put it this way. The first 20 kilometers went fine. The next 5, I was miserable. And I arrived to Grado, and I didn't even go to my diabetic. I went straight to the post office.
I love it. I love it. So what went to the post office?
I went straight to the post office and I went through my pack. I took my distress out. I took the skirt out. I had some vitamins. I took half of them out. I decided I was not going to walk in the dark, so I took my headlamp out. Yeah, and it didn't seem a lot, but it added up to 1.6 kg.
Wow.
So it was a lot. That's like more than 3 pounds. So I was shocked.
It adds
I think,
up
well,
so quick.
yeah, and then like I had put a couple things, extra toiletries for Santiago. That went in the box, but to me it seemed light enough that I was like, I should be able to carry this. But so but it was 1.6 kg, so it adds up. And I think what really, for me, but I need it, is my water bottle. That really weighs me down
Yeah.
a lot.
So water bottle instead of a Camelback.
Yeah, well, the thing with my pack, what I've noticed, if I put a Camelback in it, it takes a lot of space, and then I have issues fitting everything in. And I didn't do a sleeping bag. I did a sleep sack.
Okay.
So yeah, what did I take in my pack? 2 pants, 3 shirts, one of each I was wearing every day, 3 pair of underwear, 2 sports bras, 3 pair of socks, 2 pairs of liners, a camping towel. My camping towel is a tad bit big, I admit. I still have it from my very first Camino 10 years ago. And, I didn't know anything. And I just thought, a camping towel, I should be able to wrap myself in it like I wrap myself at home in a towel. So I bought the biggest size possible. So now I understand that wasn't necessary, but I have it, so I use that. I did a sleep sack, not a sleeping bag. I had a thin shell, I had a vest. And then I did take a little thermal t-shirt, which was what I slept in. What else did I have in there? and my sandals for my evening wear. I call it, my sandals are my evening wear. And then a toiletry bag with all the basics, and then you get into the small things, wallet, water bottle, those things that start adding up.
Yeah. Do you walk with
And
poles? You walk with poles or no?
I do. I absolutely do. I'm a big believer in using poles.
Same.
I think they help a lot, and not only up and down, but getting tired, they really help a lot.
Yeah.
And it takes pressure from your joints when you're going down. So, and those are my hiking poles. They're fairly light. I have the Black Diamond Z poles.
Mm-hmm.
They're fairly light. And I hadn't noticed how light they were until the other day. A pilgrim asked me to hold her poles. I was like, oh, wow, these poles are heavy compared to mine. So
I've never noticed that. I've never even compared mine. Interesting.
I never compare, but I noticed this. I was like, these are heavy. So
yeah, thank goodness you have the light ones, right? So Yosmar, I can't.
And then the other little thing I take that some people might think it's kind of it's not really necessary, but I take it with me because not all our biggest baths have somewhere to hang your stuff. So I take a little hook that I put over the shower door.
Oh.
And then I can hang my stuff.
That's a great idea. I love that. I will be using that tip. That's wonderful. I can't wait to get back and walk my next Camino after COVID. And I know that you're still in a state of probably processing because you literally just finished. But how did it feel being able to walk after this lockdown? And what are you processing at this point, of being able to get back there and walk?
So are you asking this more from a philosophical standpoint or a practical standpoint?
Philosophical, emotional, this lockdown was rough. It was a rough lockdown. So
it's
lots to process.
It's something I don't take for granted. I'm grateful that I have the health and the spirit to do this, because there are people and the time and the means, but to me, mostly the most important one are the health and the spirit, because if you have the health and the spirit, you will find the time and you will find the means to do it. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you make choices. If you really want something really hard, you make choices. And I have friends right now that either they don't have the health. I have a very good Camino friend that she right now doesn't have the health to walk the Camino. And so she can't be here no matter how badly she wants to be here. And she has the spirit, but she doesn't have the health. Yeah. And the spirit is, when I hear people so concerned about travel, that's where I say you don't have the spirit so much. That when I hear people like, oh, I don't know, what if I get locked down? What if this? What if that? I respect you and I'll respect your decisions, but that's where I question whether you have the spirit or not, because you don't know what's going to happen in 2 months. No one can predict the future. You may start the Camino and I'm not saying this is going to happen. And by the way, I've not heard anything about this, but I saw some comments in our Facebook group about this. Like if they shut down, you adapt. Yeah. Something positive will come out of the experience. Something positive always comes out of an experience, even if it's not the experience that you expected. And you learn something about yourself. Like, I'm sure that if I'd been in the position of that some pilgrims were in March 2020, that they were in the midst of walking the Camino and they suddenly had to get off the Camino, get to Madrid, get on a plane, get back without really knowing what the heck was going on, because nobody really knew what the heck was going on. I'm sure I would have gotten something positive out of that. Would it have been the experience I had planned for? Absolutely not. But I'm sure I would, even if it's to tell the story that, so I just tell people, don't try to predict everything that could go wrong, because if you do, you're not going to leave your home. And if you stay in your homes, stuff can still go wrong. You can trip and hit your head at home or break your hip, you know? So like, just, I'm grateful. Again, I'm grateful for having the health and the spirit to do this. And I don't consider myself the most fit person, but I really pushed through my days and I got here because I wanted to get here, I wanted to do this.
Oh, yes, that is beautiful. That is so well said. I love that. The spirit and the health and feeling that gratitude. I think, I will never take travel for granted again, and having that spirit and health, so precious. So, I'm talking to a chef, a cookbook author. We got to talk food. So, what's been have you tested anything new? Any favorite foods you want to talk about that you had this time?
Well, in Asturias, I had cachopo, which is I love, but it's like a calorie bomb, and it's basically 2 fillets of veal stuffed. They're flat, so it's like a sandwich, but it's the ham and the cheese is in the middle. Then it's breaded and fried, and usually Asturian portions are ginormous, and so it's quite big. So I had that. I had a little bit of fabada asturiana, and then I had this thing they call torto asturiano, which basically is a corn flatbread topped with, it could be seafood, it could be meats, it could be all sorts of stuff. So I had one of those in Asturias. And then Galicia, it's all the traditional stuff, the octopus, the scallops, empanada gallegas, caldo gallego. Well, croquetas is all over Spain, but it's, I ate a lot of that, continue eating a lot of that. In terms of restaurants, I'm trying to think. I was only one night in Oviedo, so I went to one that I really like, but I wish I had more time to go to others. In Lugo, that was one that I was disappointed. My favorite restaurant in Lugo did shut down permanently. But I had a really nice meal there elsewhere. And here in Galicia, I frankly haven't had enough time. I got in I got in Friday, sorry. Friday, I went to lunch to a place I'd never been. It was fine. It wasn't wow, but it was fine. And I was hungry, so I was grateful to get into a restaurant that had space, because right now this weekend is really, really busy and getting into restaurants is difficult because of capacity limits. And then at night I went to one of the tapas place with one of the pilgrims I met on the Camino. Yesterday I went to, a friend invited me to a late lunch. One of the places is near the market, and that was lovely. They had very creative renditions of octopus. They had it's tomato season here in Galicia. The tomatoes are phenomenal. My gosh, I've had the best tomatoes lately here. And I love tomatoes. I have a thing for tomatoes. They're my favorite vegetable, my favorite fruit, my favorite, whatever you want to call it, plant.
I was giggling to myself. I had to giggle to myself because I was remembering one of your posts from Iceland where you went to that tomato restaurant that had they were growing them and that's inside. Oh my gosh, that was amazing looking. Yeah, so tomatoes.
Yeah, I want to go back to Iceland just to go back to that restaurant. It's a greenhouse, a tomato greenhouse, and it was lovely. And then today I was invited somewhere else, which I've been to in the past. The food is always good and consistent. On Wednesday, I have a reservation, one of my favorites here in town. I'm hoping on Tuesday, if I don't make it out to Mushi on Tuesday, I'll go have lunch at the market, buy my seafood and have it cooked by the restaurant in the market. Have you ever done that?
Not the seafood.
Yeah,
I've had some meat dishes in the market that were amazing.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's some places where you go to the seafood stand, you buy your seafood, and then you go next door to the restaurant and they cook it for you for like €6 plus 10% of whatever you paid.
Oh.
So it's a really cool experience. I want to do that on Tuesday if I'm here. If not, I'll do that Wednesday for lunch. And what else? Yeah. So I feel like my meals have been, well, I don't want to say dictated by others, but yesterday and today they have, because, or not dictated, but predetermined by others. I was, lunch, I had an invitation to this restaurant that someone else chose last night. A friend invited me to his home and he cooked amazing food. Today, I went to this big luncheon again. I didn't decide, but I think the next few days I'm going to start exploring more of my favorites. So,
That sounds amazing.
and maybe try something new. Who knows?
So how's the cathedral looking after renovations and no scaffolding? I can't wait to see it without scaffolding.
Beautiful, gorgeous. They've, it's funny, the dome, now it's painted. I guess at one point it had polychromatic paint and it must have fallen apart. And so they redid that. Some of the columns, they had polychromatic paint as well. So they redid that. They changed all the lighting. So it's much better lighting. The pews are more modern and lighter color. So I don't know if it's because of the lighting in the pews. The whole cathedral looks much more lighter and airier. They had redone the Portico de la Gloria, which is like the inner facade of the church, but that opened up at least 2 years ago. And I visited that 2 years ago, and that was lovely. The statue of St. James the Moor Slayer that was in the cathedral has been moved to the museum now.
Oh, really?
What else? Yeah. They're the Holy Door is open. I forgot to mention that.
Yes.
So this year,
about you walking in.
yeah, you can walk into the Holy Door. So they have it, they're quite organized. They have one entrance for the Holy Door, one entrance for the cathedral. So I was able to get into the Holy Door pretty quickly. I got there yesterday morning around 8:10 in the morning, and 20 minutes later I was out. So you walk through the Holy Door, then you go through the crypt and out. They're not letting you hug the saint because of COVID. Yeah. So that's off limits. But it makes sense, it makes sense. And then to enter the cathedral, you go the other, by the other entrance, and it's lovely. The other thing, they're limiting how many people can sit in each pew. It's like 3 people per pew. And then the pews are also more separated out. And then towards the back, you don't have pews, there's chairs. And I think I posted some pictures in my Instagram story. Because of that, the cathedral almost looks a little bit smaller because you don't have so many people.
Yeah.
But it's lovely. I think they did a really good job with the renovation. The other thing I did yesterday was the tour of the rooftop. I had done this tour back in 2013. And basically you climb up some stairs to get to the rooftop. And then you walk on the roof, and it's a guided visit. So you have a guide explaining to you, the architecture of each tower, the history of the construction, etc. And that renovation has also been done very nicely. It felt safer than when I did it in 2013. 2013, I remember. It is a little bit scary, but in 2013, I felt like, well, I mean, you still can fall and slip and trip, whatever, but the roof felt like it had a lot of moss, so a little bit more slippery. Now there's no moss.
Okay.
And but yeah, and then you don't have to be standing up the whole time while the guide is talking. You can sit, and that's a little bit less scary. But that's something I really recommend. I have seen that type of tour being offered in other parts of Spain more recently, but I had never seen that anywhere before I came to Santiago. It's something that I highly doubt you'll ever be able to see anywhere in the US, assuming we had cathedrals like that, which we don't. But as if we had them, they would not allow it because of liability. But it's and you get amazing views of the city and the Obradoiro Square, etc.
How much does it cost to do that?
That one, the pilgrim rate, which is a reduced rate, is 10 euros. And it gives you access to the museum as well.
Well,
I wasn't able to go to the museum because, yeah, I had plans, so I wasn't able to go to the museum, but.
Wow. Oh my gosh. It sounds like you've just had an amazing pilgrimage, and how special to be able to end on St. James Feast weekend. I'm so grateful for you taking time out to talk to us. I know you've got to start making arrangements for the next part of your trip, so I don't want to hold you up because you've been a busy gal. So
okay.
Have we not talked about anything?
You know, it's kind of. Yeah, no, I would just say if you're thinking of coming soon, for the most part, albergues are being really good about capacity limits. You know, I remember there was one day, so one of the regions, there were 50% capacity for municipal and donativos and 75 for private. And I arrived at this one private one and I was tired, my feet hurt. And I said, it was probably one of the most challenging days. And I told the lady, can you really give me a bottom bunk? Because I knew that was a private one and probably it was going to be 75%. And she's like, you're traveling by yourself. You'll get a private bunk no matter what. I mean, a bottom bunk no matter what. So like they when they put you in sleeping, when they arrange you in the beds, they take into consideration if you're traveling by yourself or if you're in a bubble. Like if you're traveling with somebody, yes, then they'll put someone on top and someone on the bottom. But if you're by yourself, you get a whole bunk to yourself, top and bottom.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. But I would suggest anyone walking the Camino in the near future, at least in the beginning of the Camino, make some reservations until you get a better feel of what's going on. I don't think what I experienced the past 2 weeks might be reflective of what might happen in the next 2 weeks, but I don't know. So I just recommend the first few days, make a reservations and you'll get a better feel of and you'll hear hospitaleros talking, you'll get a better feel and you can go from there. You know?
No, such a great tip. Such a great tip. Well, thank you so much for taking time out. And it's always lovely to have you at the Camino Cafe. And I can't wait to see what you do next. I know it's going to be exciting no matter what it is. So wishing you safe travels as you decide what you're going to do over the next couple of days and as you head back to the US. So thank you for all that you do for the Camino community. It's really appreciated.
Oh, thank you, Leigh, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to have been asked to talk today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and we will see you soon, hopefully back another time. And thanks everyone for watching and listening, and I'll be sure to have the links to Yosmar's book and how you can see these great photos that she's been taking on Instagram and everything. So until next time, buen camino.
Perfect. Buen camino. Bye.
Bye.